Hello everyone, my name is Dakoba and welcome back to Satisfactory. We are here in a brand new world in Satisfactory Update 6. Update 6 just released a few days ago and made some major changes to the game, particular to the research and exploration systems, as well as to the look and the feel of the game through new atmospherics. We are here in the Northern Forest, which is where we're going to start this series, and it is gorgeous. When we start in a new world, the very first thing we need to do is find iron ore. This is because iron ore is sort of the essential resource in Satisfactory. It looks like there might be some actually directly in front of us. That's fortunate. Number of nodes over here. So let's pop on over and take a look at that. If you have iron ore, you can build the basics to gather resources more quickly. You can build basic miners, basic constructors, and from there build up anywhere. It looks like we've got some iron ore there up on the hill and some up there. Let's take a look around for some copper as well, because that's really what you want in an ideal starting place is iron, copper, which it looks like there's some just behind these trees there. Yep, we can see the cluster just there. And then limestone all nearby, because early in the game, those are the three resources you're going to need in large quantities. Looks like we have some limestone just over there as well, and some more right over here. So we are good. This is a great place to start. Now, I can see up near the iron, there is a hog guarding the iron. And one of the things that I have heard is that they have updated the creature AI in update 6. So this may be a slightly more difficult task to take on this hog than we had seen before. So let's pop in and try and just give him a poke. Okay. So they do have a new animation before they charge. They seem a little bit more obvious when they're about to charge. You can see them rear up like that. And they can sure send you flying farther than they could before, it looks like. There we go. And then the hog remains have also changed from being just an animal carapace to specifically being hog remains. All right, let's go ahead and get our hub set up, and then we can get started on harvesting some of this iron and copper and limestone and setting up our very basic starter base. All right, and with our hub squared away, let's go ahead and select our first milestone, which we'll go with base building for this. Now, we do have a number of components here, but we're not actually going to use these for this milestone. We're going to use these to set up some basic machinery and equipment that will let us start stockpiling these resources so we can use them for this and other milestones, as well as more buildings down the line. And it looks like the first thing we're going to need is limestone, or concrete rather, which is crafted from limestone. And so I think we had a limestone node over here. Yes, we do. And we can go ahead and choose our miner and try and place that on top of it. Now, this limestone node has a cluster on top of it, so we're going to have to break that apart before we can place a miner. Once we get that miner set up, we'll go ahead and feed the limestone from the miner into a constructor, and then that will produce the concrete that we need. So let's go ahead and set up a miner. And we can do that by selecting it in the build menu and then targeting the node and clicking. Now, this is all explained in the tutorial. If you haven't done the tutorial, I strongly recommend it. It's a great way to get started with the game and really explains the basic process. Next, we're going to set up a constructor. And on the constructor, we're going to have to choose what we want to craft. We want to craft concrete, which will take raw limestone and produce concrete. And then we can go ahead and set these up with a conveyor belt. Now, the conveyor belts will go from sort of the outward facing, you can see there's just sort of a little arrow on there, into the inward facing, which is denoted by 3 lines. The output of the constructor has that same output arrow on it. So that's how you can figure out which sort of connections go where. Now, the last thing we're going to need to do is power these buildings. And so we can do this by sending a power line and connecting that to each of them. And then we also need to provide the power, and the power is going to come from our hub for now. Eventually, we'll get into setting up some more advanced power options, but we can go ahead and set these up to a biomass burner. And it looks like the only thing we have right now that we can burn are the hog remains. I kind of want to hold on to those because I think we may want to experiment with those a little bit more. So let's go ahead and gather up some quick biomass. We can pick up some leaves and flower petals. Flower petals are a great early power source. You don't want to use them up because they're used for decoration stuff later. But there's millions of them on the map, so it's not like you're going to run out either. We can go ahead and grab some of this up. We're also getting a fair bit of wood, which is excellent for fuel. And so then we can pop on over to our craft bench and turn that wood into biomass, just like so, and chuck that biomass into our burner. And so this is using 6.67 biomass per minute. We put 120 in, so that'll give us 17, 18 minutes, which is plenty of time for us to get everything we need out of this set of equipment and establish some more stable power supplies. All right, and with our concrete production underway, let's go ahead and shift our focus to our next objective, which is going to be iron plates. So we're going to have to mine some iron for that. And just like with the concrete, there is a cluster on top of the iron node, so we're going to clear that out, and then we'll place a miner. Now this is a pure node, which means that we're going to be producing a lot more iron than we are capable of using right now. This is going to produce 120 iron ore per second, and our smelters, which are the first step of processing iron, will only be able to handle 30 iron ore per minute. Sorry, 120 iron ore per minute to 30 iron ore per minute. So this is going to be something we're going to have to address. This is an inefficiency, and unfortunately at this stage in the game, there is nothing that we can do about it. Now this smelter is going to turn the iron ore into iron ingots, and then we'll send it into a constructor, which will then translate those iron ingots into iron plates. And just like with our concrete, we're going to have to power this whole system. So we'll go ahead and set up some power lines, and we'll run this on over to our other biomass burner as well. And we can even connect these two power systems together, which will allow them to sort of share power. The power grid is smart in that as long as enough power is being produced, then it doesn't really fuss where the power comes from or where it goes. And just to get that other biomass burner set up, let's go ahead and craft our leaves into biomass. I'm looking forward to being able to automate biomass and really automate power once we unlock coal in the next tier. Let's go ahead and get this running. And there we go. And so now we have iron plates and concrete under production. Now, right now, we aren't doing anything with these products. They're just sort of sitting in these output machines. So we're going to have to go around periodically and gather them up, which isn't that big of a deal, but that's definitely something we're going to want to address soon, is setting up storage for these so that we don't have to worry about, popping in every 2 or 3 minutes to make sure that the machines don't back up. Now it looks like we have another iron node up here, so let's go ahead and set up another miner and smelter and constructor for our final requirement for this milestone, which is iron rods. So we'll go ahead and set down another miner. Now, when you start the game, if you skip the tutorial process, you start with the materials to make 4 miners, and then I think about 4 smelters, constructors, and so on. And so I think that's really the sort of the starting materials. But we're going to need a lot more than that over time for sure. Let's set these up. Our basic power pole has 4 connectors on it. Since these systems have 3 machines, we can use 1 connection for each of those, and then 1 connection that feeds back in to our sort of power grid and allows us to connect to other machines there as well. Let's go ahead and turn on these machines, make sure that they have their recipes set. So we're taking the iron ore, turning it into iron ingots, and then turning the iron ingots into iron rods. And that should do it for this. Now, these are going to take a few minutes to process and produce the number of items that we need. So we're going to go ahead and take that time and take a look around the area and see what else we can see about this place we've chosen as our starting area. There are a number of places you can choose in each of the starting areas. In the Northern Forest, there's at least one more good one far over to the west, I believe, on the west end of the forest, which has a large number of resources as well. But let's take a look around. So I think I saw that there was more iron over here. I think we counted 4 and yeah. So, okay. So there's some more iron nodes back here. Let's pop on over, make sure there's no monsters around them guarding them. There's one here and one just over here. This one has a boulder on it, which means we can't really set up a miner on it. We're not going to have access to it for a while yet. That's okay. With the 2 pure ones that we've already found, and this one is pure as well, we're going to be doing just fine on iron for a long time. Looks like there are some more just a couple 100 meters in this direction. So let's pop on over and take a look at those. Continuing to gather biomass as we move. So there's the iron we were looking for. Hop on over here and see that these are 2 more iron nodes, and they are, well, that one is pure and this one is also pure. So we have a ton of iron. We have 5 pure iron nodes to start with. Do we have anything up in this direction, in this corner? We've got another limestone deposit over here on the south side, or over here on the west side of the area. Looks like we've got some berry bushes. That's good. We're going to want to gather up some berries. Berries are a good thing to keep 4 or 5 of on hand in case you come across any lizard doggos, but they're also used as healing items, and that's really sort of their primary function. So we're going to definitely want to stockpile those to make sure we are able to stay alive. All right, we have come back here, and let's go ahead and pick up the items out of our machines. Make sure that we are keeping those clear so they can continue to run efficiently. And then we're going to go ahead and set up our last sort of primitive crafting setup, which will be copper. It's the last resource that's available to us at this stage of the game, and we're definitely going to need it for some of those other milestones, as well as for things like continuing to expand our power infrastructure. So I believe the copper vein was iron. Yeah, it's right here. So we can again harvest the cluster on top of the vein and then place down a miner. Now, one of the things we're going to have to address here is power. The 2 biomass burners on our hub each provide 20 megawatts of power. Each of these setups will use about 12 megawatts of power. Since we have 3 over there, that comes to 36. I think we're actually at 32 because we don't have a smelter on our concrete setup. But regardless, for the copper setup, we're going to need 5 for the miner, and then 4 for the smelter and 4 for the constructor. And that puts us over the 40 that's available to us. I think we just don't have the capacity for it. So that means we're going to need another biomass burner. Fortunately, that's something we can craft, but unfortunately, we don't have enough wire for it. We've used a bunch of our wire setting up our other mining. So this is one of the pains of the early game. We are going to have to craft some wire by hand and possibly even some cables so we can get the cabling set up as well. So let's pop on over here and do that real quick. All right, with that wire crafted, let's pop back over to our copper mine and set up a biomass burner. And right now we can just build these any old place because again, we will have plenty of opportunity for rebuilding this later on. So we've got our miner set up. We're going to need to set up a smelter and then a constructor. That. All these up. Now, because we're mining copper here, we're going to turn this into copper ingots rather than iron ingots. Let's connect up our wires. It looks like we have actually run out of cabling as well, so we're going to have to pop back on over and craft just a little bit more of those. I think 2 or 3 more cables should be all we need. Got 6, craft pretty quickly. So then we can take that cabling, set that to the constructor as well as to the smelter. And then last but not least, put some biomass into our biomass burner and we should be good. So it looks like, yeah, each of these setups takes 13 megawatts and this biomass burner will actually provide 30 megawatts. We could even do another one based just on this one alone if we wanted to. All right, so we've got copper ore coming out. That is being smelted into copper ingots, and then those copper ingots are going to be smelted into wire. One thing we could do here if we wanted is we could turn that wire into cable, but unfortunately, we actually need the wire as well. And that's one of the issues with the very early game. Until we get some of these first milestones unlocked, we don't have the ability to differentiate our production. It's the same reason we aren't producing any screws over here in our iron setup, because those are crafted from iron rods. And right now, the only source of iron rods we have is this constructor. And so we would have to wait until we get splitters unlocked in order to split off half of those iron rods to make the screws we need. All right, we're going to continue gathering up these resources and see if we're getting closer. It looks like we have enough to unlock base building. That's excellent. So let's pop back on over to the hub and send off this milestone and take a look at what we need for the next. So fill in each of these areas, press the button, and there we go. All right, and with that drop pod away, we will be able to send off our next milestone in 1:30, but I think it'll take a little longer than that to get our resources together. The next milestone is logistics. Now, we don't have to do these in order. We could do field research first if we wanted to, but I like base building and logistics first because they're what are going to let us set up our starting factory in the way that we want, in a way that's visually appealing and in a way that sort of is easy to navigate and feels good. So logistics is the other one that we really want to get. So let's go ahead and unlock that. It looks like we already have the plates. We can't put them in until the drop pod returns. But we're also going to need a bunch more iron rods and a bunch more copper. So let's pop on over and see how we're doing on those. All right, I've gathered up a few more resources, but not enough to send off our milestone. So we're going to go ahead and set up our biomass burners with a full stock of biomass. That'll let them to run for plenty of time. And then we're going to go ahead and sort of let these machines crank for a little while and build up the resources that we need in order to go forward. All right, with the sun just peeking over the horizon, it has been about 10 minutes and we are ready to send off our next milestone and unlock logistics, which is going to be a huge help for us and will finally allow us to set up our starter base. So let's go to our hub terminal. I've been gathering up our resources, so you can see we have quite a few iron plates and iron rods, as well as enough copper to send off this milestone. We also have a whole bunch of concrete that we've gathered up, which is great because we're going to need to be building a ton of foundations. So we're going to go ahead and send this away and then take a look at our what we need to do in order to establish our base. All right, now we're here with an aerial view of our basic base setup. You can see we've got our iron down here and our limestone production there and our copper just poking through the trees there. And we're going to go ahead and sort of map out how we want our basic starter base to work. And this is something that I find is really helpful in terms of planning forward and being able to expand the base as we see fit. We need to decide how much we want to build in this location before we expand. And to do that, we need to figure out sort of when we want to move on. Now, I think we're going to use this base for all of tier 1 and tier 2, and then probably move elsewhere, somewhere with a little bit better access to some more advanced resources when we get to tier 3. And so in order to do that, let's go ahead and map out enough space for what we want to build. So we know we've got a number of iron nodes here, and then there's a couple more down there. And so what we can do is we can actually sort of use this whole area down here as sort of iron mining and smelting. And then we can take our concrete production and just sort of use that to sneak in here along the central base and send this over to this large central plane. This large central plane is going to be our primary processing area where we have all our constructors, later on assemblers, and maybe even some manufacturers if we decide to use this space that late in the game in order to do stuff. Now, one thing we need to keep in mind is natural pathways through the area. So for example, there is a road that sort of starts up here in the hills and then comes down through here and cuts across like that. And so this goes from the rest of the northern forest and the rocky desert to the west over there and heads over to the east to the dune desert and the swamp. And that's something that we're probably going to want to leave intact because that'll be a really great avenue for us to use trucks and trains to move cargo to and from this area or wherever we decide to set up more advanced production. Another option we have is to take advantage of our copper production over here. So we've got our copper mine here, but we actually have a nice ledge up here that is pretty flat. And so we could clear that out and do our copper production there, send our copper production up on the ledge into smelters and constructors there. And then maybe for now, just have that come back down into storage areas down here, but that would free up the space for those smelters and constructors for other things so that we could really use this place for our advanced iron production and all of the iron production we're going to need in tiers 1 and 2, which is really going to be the main emphasis there. We're also going to need to feed in some of that copper, and so that'll be a useful thing to do. So I think that's the basic plan is to have this large sort of central plaza here that has all of our manufacturing and then leaves the resource gathering sort of out of the way, and we just sort of bring things in via belt lines. All right, and with that out of the way, I think we're going to build our starter base in the form of a time lapse. Let's get into it. All right, and with that out of the way, we now have our basic starter factory all squared away and set up. Up here we have our iron production. You can see we're mining off of a single iron mine and sending that into 4 smelters, which are then sending the iron ingots into a series of constructors. Over here we've got one constructor making iron rods, which is then being sent forward to make screws, another constructor just making the iron rods for storage, and one for iron plates. And then just down on the other side here, we have our basic concrete setup where we have the limestone mine sending the limestone into a constructor to make concrete. And up on the ledge, we have a miner mining copper ore and sending that up to be smelted into copper bars and then be crafted into wire and cabling. You can also see we set up a biomass burning array and that we're not using the burners on our hub anymore. And that's just an aesthetic choice. You know, I let this run for maybe 20 or 30 minutes before we built this so that I had enough materials to do this. And I think 8 biomass burners should last us until we can get on coal power. If we need more, we can always add another row on either side of this. And I've got a storage container here where I've stored my leftover biomass so I can keep these topped up and running. Now, with that all complete, let's take a look at our final milestone for today's episode, which is going to be field research. You can see that that's going to take some wire, some screws, and some plates. And it turns out we have enough resources of each of these. So let's send this away and see what we unlock. All right, and with that milestone away, we've unlocked a couple of new features. Now, the first thing we unlocked with that new milestone is the map, which we can open by pressing M. And there are some new features on the map which are really exciting for me. One of the things that you can use the map for now is as an exploration aid. And so let's say, for example, that you're going on an adventure and you're looking around, you find some cool feature that you want to make note of. So for example, we've got these 2 iron veins over here, and let's say we want to mark those on the map. Well, what we can do here is we can take and drop any of these pins, and we can just sort of set that right there. And now we've got this place marked on our map, and it's there forevermore. And in addition to being able to sort of see that on the map, what we can do is we can actually highlight that stamp, and it will then show up as a beam of light, a beacon that we can travel to, that we know exactly how to find our way back there. It makes it so much easier to find these things in the overworld, whereas before, navigating was a great deal more of a hassle. So I'm very excited about that feature. This also works if we want to do a more permanent beacon style stamp. So we can go ahead and do a new map marker, for example, and we can place a map marker up here in the Great Canyon. So let's go ahead and call that Great Canyon, just like so. And that then will stay up there. And I believe we can set that to appear on our compass. Yeah, so we can set that to appear on our compass. We can change the color of it in case we want it to be, pink. And then we can also highlight that marker as well. And so that should now appear on our map, and we aren't close enough to see sort of the beam of light from it, but it would be there as we approach. And that is something that is tremendously useful for us as well. So this is going to make sort of noting out the map as we explore so much easier, so much better. I'm very excited for that. The other new thing we unlocked with field research is the MAM, which is one of the ways that we can unlock new technologies and new buildables in Satisfactory. To use the MAM, we come here and we simply select an area of research. So for example, under alien organisms, you can find sort of the remains of all the different alien creatures. Now we have a single piece of hog remains because we had fought off one hog while we were sort of establishing our base. So we can go ahead and research that and learn how to make alien protein from the hog remains. And so we can go ahead and do that research, and that will now be unlocked for us. And we can now craft that if we find more hog remains. You can also see that's unlocked some new research for us, which we can explore at a later time when we have some more materials available to us. And that's going to do it for today. I think in our next episode, we're going to dive into tier 2. We're going to take a look at a number of these other milestones and then figure out how to sort of adapt our current factory to manufacture these more complex products, in particular the reinforced iron plates, which are essential for building constructors and that we're going to need as our Mark II belt materials. We're going to want to be able to automate that. So we're going to look at how we can sort of take this factory and sort of help it grow into its next phase. And that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching this new episode of our brand new series in Satisfactory Update 6. I hope you've enjoyed it. Leave a like if you have, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. My name is Ben Dakoba, and as always, I hope you have an efficient day. I'll see you soon.